the line right now. Right now.
What's up, everybody? Glad to have you for another edition of the Alignment Podcast. And today I am joined by an amazing soul who's doing some beautiful work, pioneering freedom, if you will, in some powerful ways. Got a chance to meet him in person and honored that he is showing up today for this wonderful podcast. His name is Jim Gale. Now, welcome, Jim. So glad we could make this happen. So appreciate you making the time to come today.
Oh, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see you again and chat with you. Man, I just love your energy, and yeah, let's inspire some people today.
Absolutely. So Jim and I got a chance to talk earlier, and I actually got a chance to come down to the land you have with, if I'm not mistaken, over 250 edible plants or something along those lines.
Yes, about 250 different species and thousands of individual food-producing plants all over the place.
Amazing. Yeah. And it was such a beautiful thing to see. And tell everybody about kind of how that happened. Then well, you know what? Before we jump into that, I almost forgot to ask you the question I ask every guest. So this is called the Alignment Podcast because for me, alignment is really what has helped me take back my sanity and help me find harmony and bliss in life and be able to accept things that happen. So alignment means different things to different people. So I'm curious, what does alignment means for you?
Right now, I'm getting rained on by the sprinklers, and I'm loving every minute of it. Alignment is presence. Presence, from my perspective and from my practice, is the ultimate alignment, because when we're present, we are aligned with the mind of God, the mind of Source, the mind of nature, the mind of the all-powerful.
That's beautiful. Love that answer, and I couldn't agree more. So what has brought you to that remembering? What has brought you? What are some milestones that brought you to this place?
Yes. I want to remember. I want to again be a member of Source, right? What we have been, there's been so much deception and so much, and that's what life is about. Life is about becoming aware of the great deception. And the deception, the ultimate fundamental deception, is that we are separate from our Creator, right? The truth is that we are not, but the ego, that's the ego's lie, right? Edging God out, right? Ego. It's about this idea that we are somehow different from or separate from the omnipresence and omnipotence of God. And then it gets deeper, right? So once I realized after 30 years of studying this, that that's what it's all about. It's about realigning with the intelligence, the wisdom, the mind, the beauty, the joy, the love of the Creator. And then just sitting peacefully and quietly, asking with intention questions, and then following up on the answers and taking action on the answers.
Yes, so we speak quite the same language.
Yeah.
And when you meet somebody that speaks that language, to me, it's a sign that they not only know about alignment, but they do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I have a person who talks about, he's kind of a mentor, but he has this wonderful phrase. It's not about just talking about cooking rice. It's about cooking the rice. So sounds like you've been cooking the rice, my friend. So let's tell everybody about your wonderful journey with how it evolved as far as any milestones that you felt were like turning points for you to bring you to this realization of the importance of alignment and the importance of following through on inspired action.
I love it. These epiphanies, these turning points, as you call them, they're coming more and more all the time now. The more aligned that I get with practice and meditation and just sitting in nature, the more I realize that these epiphanies are all over all the time. It's amazing. So I guess one of the fundamental ones was when I heard of the term enlightenment, right? And I had not heard of that concept before. And so I heard about it and I started studying up on it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If people can be enlightened, and if that's the highest state of a person's potential, then I want that. Because why not? And at the same time, this is back when my late teens and early 20s, I was on a road trip to Texas. We were in a network marketing company. And, you know, they have these events every so often, these rah-rah events. And I was on my way to one of those rah-rah events, and we were listening to a cassette series called The Psychology of Winning with Dennis Waitley. And it blew my mind. I was in shock that I had not learned what I learned on that cassette series in school or from my parents or from my culture, my society, from somewhere, my church, or I didn't learn this stuff anywhere. And so I went down this kind of rabbit hole of possibility. And one of the fundamentals was when I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon was commissioned to study the most successful manifestors in the history of the world. And after decades of studying these folks, he deducted whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. And so I got real passionate. And from there, the life has been an incredible journey.
And let me ask you this, because this is happening to me recently. We talked earlier about some of the insights that are coming through. Seems similar for you, like the speed at which you may desire to go versus the speed at which is best and highest for you to go don't always match.
That's for
Right?
sure.
And sometimes it can feel like letting go of like this part of you and this desire of you, but it's for the best, and we know it's for the best, right?
Yep.
So have you felt like listening and aligning and stepping into that calling has been not only rewarding, but taught you to trust the next time you get called to do something big that's totally against what you desire, that that it makes it easier for you to let go, or is it still a consistent challenge, or how would you answer that?
It's less of a challenge now than it was 6 months ago. And it's way less of a challenge now than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
It's a practice. It's a practice of presence. And my intention now, through all of the things that I've learned, is to literally be free of chatter in the mind, free of the incessant anxiety and worry and fear and just the thought circles that go round and round. And for the most part, I am now. And I can sit quietly here without any thoughts in my mind for minutes at a time. I'm not there for hours, and it's not all the time, but for the most part, I am present.
That's beautiful, brother. Beautiful. And that liberation in and of itself not only produces a beautiful experience, but also births some creative and inspirational direction sometimes.
My hat, the reason I was pointing to it, because it says free man.
Free man.
And the ultimate freedom is freedom from mind control, govern mente. That's the ultimate freedom. When we're free from mind control, then we're truly free.
Wow, I just got that. Govern mente.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's not an accident.
That's hilarious. I never
Yeah.
thought of that. How
Yeah.
about that? That's beautiful, brother. So what I found unique when meeting you and coming down to the land, a lot of the ideas that you expressed, some of them were new to me
Yeah.
when it came to sovereignty
Yeah.
and the way you view and express sovereignty. Now I'm more aligned with it because I'm tuned into it.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was like, oh, that's a new expression. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about when it for you what sovereignty means and then how that's expressing for you that free man.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind is this energy or frequency or vibration or experience of the word and the experience of faith. Um, what is that? Right. Well, I've contemplated that significantly. And what faith is trusting that we're more than this, that there is, we are in a divine experience. I play it like a game in the mind of God. And so faith, when I realized that anything I do because I'm scared of something is not faith. So I have let go of all fear. Now somebody says, "Oh, Jim, you're so full of crap. You're not scared of rattlesnakes?" I'm like, "Of course I'm not. Why would I be scared of a rattlesnake?" Now, will I pet one? Will I grab one? Of course I won't. There's a difference between fear and awareness, right? Awareness of what's going on and awareness of the serpents and not to degrade the serpents, because serpents are wonderful in general. But the parasites that are in our world, in our minds, in our soil, and in the governmente, awareness has led me to this realization that there's only one way out of this slave system, and that is by having full faith and very strategically demonstrating service and abundance. So I'm like, and I'll give you a real clear example on that. About 2.5 years ago, I declared that I am a free man, just like the hat says. And what does that mean? Well, when I first was told that I was a slave by somebody who knew a lot more than I did, I got angry. I got upset. I said, "I'm not a slave. I could do anything I want to. I'm a free man." And he goes, "Oh, really? Oh, how much taxes did you pay last year?" And last year, that time happened to be a real good year. I paid a lot of taxes. And he goes, "What happens if you don't pay taxes?" Well, by the threat of force and violence, the mind control people will come after me, right? That is slavery, right? Now, the mind control people, the governmented people, and I'm not talking about the individuals at every level. They're mostly good people. I'm talking about at the head of the snake. This system is radically corrupt and radically evil. So what we did is not only did we declare that we are free, but we now have built 10 homes without asking for any permission. We've also declared that we will never pay property taxes, because you cannot have a free society when people are paying taxes on their labor or on their land. So about 14 months ago, a fella came here, and I got a call from my partner on the land, and he goes, "Jim, there's a guy in front of your house with a badge and a clipboard asking to see building permits." And I'm like, oh man, I had a wave of adrenaline go through my body. And you could call that fear. And as soon as I recognized it, I stood up, I took a few deep breaths, and I started walking. And I walked through the food forest here where I'm sitting, and I walked over to the fella, and I turned on my phone, and I started recording. And I walked up to this fella, and I said, "Hi, my name is Jim Gale, and I am recording this conversation just so we don't mix up any words here. What's your name?" And he said, "My name's Alexi." I said, "It's nice to meet you, Alexi. But how did you get permission to come on my land when it's posted implied consent is not granted?" And I expected him to be a puffed up government authoritarian. Well, he wasn't. he said, I'm sorry, the gate was open, so I simply came in, but I will leave if you want me to. And I was like, oh my gosh, I like this guy. So I said, well, maybe. But before you leave, I would like to show you something. So we walked here into the food forest, and I said, it is our duty for the sake of all that is good for our kids and grandkids and for life on earth itself to be the stewards of this land, to care for and protect this land, this living Mother Earth that provides so much for us. And what your clipboard will do and what your organization that you represent will do is allow me to kill everything. You'll even subsidize it. Every check mark you make is represented by the biological death zones that are in every HOA community around here. And he said, oh my God. He had a tear in his eye. He said, you're 100% right. I will never bother you again. See, when the government loses its moral authority, which, by the way, happened at inception, then we cannot pay this very system that enslaves us, right? And for all of those working for government, good. You have such an important role to play in the transition of our world from dying to living again. And that is to do good from the inside of the system. So this is not a condemnation. It's the opposite of that. It's an invitation.
That's beautiful, brother. So you have made no bones about, I am here doing this. I have no problem making it very clear. That was another thing that kind of surprised me when I came down and I saw that sign for myself. I was like, oh wow, this guy is definitely standing in his power and really moving in that faith, moving in that trust, and doing amazing things. And I want to talk specifically about the size of the land you're on now, and what condition it was in when you found it, and how because you've created a whole, I'll call it a science for lack of a better word, or art, whatever you want to call it, of what you do with food forests. So talk about this specific property, where it was when you got it, how you turned it into this many species of edible plants now.
I love it. So I like to call it the art of stewardship. And that's what we're meant to do here. When we put just a little bit of energy in a specific way, in a strategic way, in a way that has been proven over the millennia to create results, then what the earth will do, when we care for the earth, what the earth will do is care for us back exponentially. So I'll give you an example of that. So there's a hog plum, a loquat, and a guava, and a cherry tree, and a mulberry tree. And those are literally free energy systems. Now, people say, what are you talking about? That's not an electrical system. Well, it absolutely is. What do humans run on? What do we operate on? Calories. We operate on calories. So that system in the ground, we could let that go and come back in 30 years, and this whole system all around me will not only be a jungle of food, but it will expand for hundreds of miles by itself. Well, with the help of nature. And how does that happen? When the seeds fall from one tree, or when a bird eats a mulberry and flies across the lake and poops, now you've got a new mulberry growing on the other side of the lake. So the amount of energy that has led us to where we are right now on this incredible planet of destruction, the energy of destruction, well, we are at the turning point. This is the end of the destruction of our world. And it's still happening, but it's happening less, and people are waking up and starting to take responsibility again.
That's so beautiful, brother. And that land you have was like sand or sugar sand or something like that, right?
Yep. There was nothing here 2.5 years ago there was nothing here but sand. Florida sugar sand. Now it's a thriving, ridiculously abundant food forest. There's sweet potatoes on the ground. There's turmeric. There's moringa. It's just nonstop food all over the place. And that's how we're supposed to live. The Garden of Eden is not a utopic fantasy. It's the next logical step for humanity.
Yeah, totally agree. So what we talked about earlier today in our brief chat, I was hearing something you've long heard, but hearing recently to start at home.
Yeah.
And I know there are people in different places. Like, so let's just give the example for maybe you can give a couple of levels of how you could start at home. For the basic DIY person, doesn't have a big budget, but wants to start at home and is hearing that call, how would they do it? And then for the person who has a little bit of a budget, how would you recommend they do it?
I love it. So we are collaborating with people that are homeless, that don't have really any money to speak of. And we've given them sweet potato starts, and they're planting sweet potatoes around homeless encampments, right? So this can be done by anybody. It starts with the intention to be free and to be healthy and to be a producer as well as a consumer. Once the intention is set, and I invite everybody listening to set that intention right now, I will be free. And then once you set that intention, then God will light up the way. And then when you become aware, because your intention is so clear, then it'll be obvious to you what next steps to take. And sometimes we take wrong steps, but when they're not in alignment with our intention, we become aware of the unalignment immediately or very quickly. So it starts again with the awareness that it's possible, and it is, and then we set the intention that we want to be part of the solution.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's where I find myself just through listening, hearing that it's time to move into the exact words you said, stewardship, and that's humanity's actual natural path. Like that's what we're at our essence. That's who we are. We've just been conditioned differently and taught all these other roles, but to be able to come back to that harmony with nature, that harmony is what I'm hearing, and excited about it. I love what you have done because I don't think I hadn't seen like this food forest concept and what you're doing. I hadn't seen it done to that degree, and I've never seen it done in that kind of land. Like sugar cane. I'm like, what? I don't even think it was possible to grow things that way. So you all have really come up with a beautiful way to do things that aren't typically done. And my understanding is you've come up with a way to do it in different environments, like unique to the environment.
Yeah. So I haven't come up with really anything. Everything that I'm talking about, other people have come up with. The Permaculture Society, the Permaculture Network and community have within the community, the solution, the answer to all of the world's biggest problems, from deforestation and mass extinction to diabetes, cancer, children's suicide, war, you name it. And how do they do that? Well, it's a science of mimicking nature. So the truth is that God has the solution, that nature has the solution. And God didn't mess up, right? It's all around us. It's the mess is that we have gotten away from stewardship of our land and stewardship of nature. But it's easy to come back to, and it's joyful. Like, I love my homestead. I absolutely love being here. In fact, about 8 mini documentaries have been done from here, and some major ones are coming, and TV shows and films and all sorts of stuff. And anybody can do this. I was dead broke. I had made a lot of money back in my early 30s. And about 18 years ago now, I realized that if we continue along our current path, then I probably won't have grandkids. I have 4 daughters now. And it got me really worried for a little while. And it sent me down kind of a rabbit hole of scarcity and anxiety about what are we going to do for my kids? And then I read Bill Mollison's quote. He's the father of permaculture. And he wrote, though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And that set me to bawling. And then I decided to dedicate my life to the solutions from that point on.
Beautiful, brother.
Yeah.
And I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what you've done is to see there or facilitated nature doing.
Yeah, that's the way to say it.
Shows-
Yep.
Yeah, it shows the power of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And my understanding is you've had the honor of helping others do the same. Can you talk a
Many.
little bit about that work?
Absolutely. So we launched a company back about 3.5 years ago called Food Forest Abundance. And this company is made up of designers and installers and Freedom Farm Academy owners. And these are people that, when you combine all of their skill sets, the designers design the landscape. So that's the first step. After setting the intention, the next step is finding the land or using the land that you currently have. And the step after that is designing it using the principles of permaculture, which are so fantastic. Right? The first principle is to observe and interact. Right? So when you get a piece of land, you go stand on it, you go watch the sunset on it, you go feel the wind patterns on it, you look at the ground and you can see where the washways are. So if we have a big rain event, you can see where the gullies are, you can see where the water flows, and then you design according to all of those factors a system around your ultimate vision, right? So some people in the north, they might want 12 different kinds of apples and 5 different kinds of pears and 8 different kinds of kiwi and so on and so on and so on, right? Here in the south, we've got 10 different kinds of bananas and 6 or 7 different types of avocados and mangoes and so on. So it depends on the zone and what your vision is.
That makes sense. Yeah. And so the way you all help, like let's say someone's watching, is like, oh man, I've got this property. I want to turn my property into food forest. Where do they go to contact you and start working with those wonderful designers?
Yep.
They set the intention and they're ready.
Yep. They go to foodforestabundance.com, and then one of our designers send us an email, and then one of our head designer, Alan Campbell or Matthew Britt, will get in touch with them, and then they'll kind of ask a few questions and give like a free 30-minute strategy session. And then from there on, if people want to move forward with the design process, they sure can. If not, the strategy session will give enough information where people can do it themselves. If you want to spend the time, if you have money and you want to speed things up, then get a design and get it done. If you want to do it yourself and you're on a tighter budget, then everything we do is open source, right? So anybody can go on our website. They can take any information they want. They can take the designs and try to mimic and copy them if they want to. And basically, our mission is to inspire and empower a shift that leads to mass adoption of taking the poisons out. And the poisons all come from the head of the snake. At the end of the day, they all come from an entity or are funded or supported by an entity that is happened to be named BlackRock, right? BlackRock is not only the name, it is the intention. And the opposite of that is what we're looking to do.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the things that I hear when I tune in, we talk about that alignment with source, is that there are literally nefarious forces at work, that they are a thing.
Yeah.
But not to be afraid of them, to realize they're part of our consciousness, because all consciousness is our consciousness.
Yes.
It's just the reality of what's happening. And
Yes.
then we have to find our roles in how to navigate that.
Yeah.
It sounds like you found a pretty exciting role in to navigate that, to bring in this wonderful aspect of, as you call it, stewardship, and then helping people start at home. That's
Yeah.
to me. That's now I'm finally. Let me just say one more thing. The paths that we take, I think, help prepare us to get ready to move into that for those who choose it. Not everybody's going to choose that though.
Yeah.
That's just the reality.
Yep.
That's why there's nefarious forces, or
Yeah.
that's why there's you know those who aren't on a path of awakening. They might be on a path of suffering, whatever
Yeah.
the case. But because of that, I think it's valuable to recognize and honor. Like even though you mentioned BlackRock, for me, I feel like without BlackRock, there wouldn't be what you were doing.
There you
You know
go.
what I'm
I couldn't agree more. It's all
saying?
part of, like I inferred earlier, a divine game in the mind of God.
Yeah,
And we're
bingo.
players in the game. If you're listening to this show right now, then you're a player in the game because you recognize there's a reason we're here doing what we're doing. There's no accidents, right?
That's
There
it.
might be missteps, and all of those missteps, if we take a breath and say, oh, what was that all about? We can learn from every experience, improve, and step right the next time.
That's right. So, what have some? Just curious, what has surprised you about doing this work? What has been surprising that like you just didn't expect in doing
Yeah.
what you're doing?
The biggest surprises, well, one of the big surprises is how fast you can turn land around when you use a simple process, right? So we started with sand, and then the first thing we did then we designed it. And while we were designing, we called some mulch companies and we had them deliver mulch. And we got truckloads of mulch and we spread it out all over the place. And then we threw in beans and pioneering plants like Mexican sunflower and ice cream bean and sugarcane and perennial peanut and sunshine mimosa. And we started putting that all over the ground. And then these plants, they actually build soil. They fix nitrogen and they create pathways and they hold water and they keep the sun off of the soil because soil does not want to be seeing the sun. Soil wants to be in the shade, right? So what surprised me, the number one thing is the power of nature is exponential and it's beautiful. The thing that really blows my mind lately is the synchronicities that are happening right now. These divine gifts that are coming together where people and circumstances are happening now every day that cannot be by accident. And I could share a few with you if you want.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Definitely.
So we're on this 51-acre piece of land, and I grew up on a 60-acre lake with a dock every 100 feet or so, and it was packed with people. Now, my intention when I was a kid, I wanted to have a bigger lake with more room and fewer people. And now we happen to be on a 430-acre private lake where we've got the only docks on the entire lake. And it's just amazing. And then my partner wanted a runway or maybe at least a grass strip where he could land his little plane. Well, when you set an intention, this is what God does, which is so much fun, is we now, to the east of our property, bordering the whole east part of our property, there's a mile-long paved runway. So the intention is that world leaders, the good ones, will be coming here, landing their jets, coming and parking near our tennis court, and learning about freedom. Right? And by the way, again, I like to say I was dead broke 4 years ago. I was in debt. I was more than broke. And then I stepped into faith and courage, and that's when everything changed. But about 2 or 3 months ago, I set the intention to build out Galt's Landing CSA, which is Community Supported Agriculture, like a cooperative. And now the leader of the cooperative and our chief of security, his name is Chris Allison. He was the security team lead for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon, right? And now our head chef, our chef coming in to help prepare the foods, his name is Eric Heinzelman. Eric opened up like 35 Planet Hollywoods. He was like Planet Hollywood's #1 guy, right? So now, and it was a stressful job in that corporate world. Now he's working for Planet Earth, and he's our head chef, right?
That's all.
Right? And I got one more that gets down into some tactics that I think you'll find fascinating. So, I mean, I've got hundreds more, but there's one big one. So about a year and a half ago, I was sitting here in the food forest, feet on the ground, grounding barefoot and meditating and asking, what can I do next? I don't remember the exact question I was asking, but the download of information that came to me. And I don't want to pretend like when I hear people talk like this, I'm like, oh God, they have something I don't. Not at all, right? What I'm talking about is simply taking some breaths, asking questions, and then allowing the mind to be silent. So the word download might not be the correct word, but ideas came to me that felt so juiced and so energetic that I just about fell over. I don't know. I was inspired to the max. And here's what those ideas were. It was campaign season back then. And the idea was to create a campaign and offer it to all of the candidates that are running for office, including the president candidates. And the campaign was this: create a set of documents, 4 strategies. And a strategy in a campaign starts with a big claim. And they were all, boom, at the same time. I was aware of all of them. The number one big claim, or the first big claim that came.
I still hear you.
Okay, sorry. Somebody, just a quick call, and I put it in a voicemail. I forgot to hit the do not disturb button. But anyway, the
One
first.
second, your recording stopped. Let's figure out what's going on here. It's telling me your recording stopped. How do we start that again? Let me see. Oh no, it's back on. Okay, you're good.
Okay, good. Yeah,
All right,
jeepers.
go ahead.
So the first big claim was, now I had the vision of a presidential candidate. In this case, I had a vision of Bobby Kennedy standing in a school surrounded by kids, and they have shovels, and they're bending down, and Bobby Kennedy is saying, we are going to take all of the poisons out of the school lunches and the school land. The children will grow some of the food that they need for themselves and their families, and the children will heal. As a result of this, we will reverse childhood diabetes trends and cancer and depression and big pharma poison use. We will reverse all of the trends, and the children will heal. Now, is that a big claim or what?
I feel every piece of that.
Right? Now, here's the cool part. It's been done all over the world. It's already been done. And every time that it's done and they study these kids, the kids are healthier and happier by far, and smarter by far than their counterparts, than the kids in the normal indoctrination system. So that was the first big claim. And I'll run through the other ones a little snappier. The second big claim was a picture of Donald Trump. Now, I used 4 different candidates for this because I was speaking to all of them. I don't care, Democrat, Republican, I just want to speak to all of the people that want to hold these offices of typically force and empower them to do good. So the second one was Donald Trump in a prison, and he's surrounded by inmates, and they're holding shovels, and they're putting food in the ground. And he said, I will take all the poisons out of the prisons, and the inmates will grow their own food. Well, guess what? And by the way, as a result of this, we will reduce crime by more than 50% in the next 4 years. How big of a claim is that? Now, the question people would be asking at first was, first they'll say he's crazy, and then they'll harass him, and then they'll look up the studies. And every time this has been done and studied, it has resulted in a reduction in recidivism of 60 to 70%. And when we add Dr. Michael Rice's work on healing trauma, the reduction in recidivism goes over 90%. So now you've got politicians completely fixing the school system and the prison system. And the next one was Kanye West, and he was inside of a church, or on a church land. And he said, I'm going to call up the churches to, instead of demonstrating the lawn, which is the physical foundation of humanity's enslavement, they will be demonstrating the Garden of Eden at every church in our land, at least every ethical one, because stewardship is a very big topic in the Bible,
Yes.
right? And what we're doing now is not stewardship at the level of the churches. And by the way, if anybody listening knows anybody that goes to church, or if you do, please share this message, because
Oh yeah.
this is already happening, right? So, and then the next one was foreign army bases. We must end the force and violence of colonialism. And how to do that? Well, there's one thing that destroys scarcity, and that's abundance. There's one thing that supplants war, and that is peace. So we basically turn all of these foreign army bases into food forests, which are a good investment on every conceivable level. And we end war. And so I created the strategy and I put it out to my network. And 2 months later, I'm sitting next to Bobby Kennedy, him and I on a couch, and I'm sharing the strategy word for word with him. 6 months after that, the Maha movement was born.
Yes.
Yep. And I'm not claiming or pretending that that was for sure the reason, but it exactly lays out the tactics that must be implemented. In fact, Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. And that's what this system does. It takes the current use of resources in the schools, the prisons, the churches, and the military, and it turns the dial from unsustainable, wicked, evil, bad, whatever you want to call it. It just turns the dial of awareness to regenerative. So when these systems start growing food, we will, in 4 years, we will have a completely decentralized and poison-free food supply chain.
That's beautiful. The heart of what Bobby Kennedy's message shifted into, as you're probably fully aware, with that Maha movement, that I think helped bring people together and align with the messaging, was the children.
Yes.
And just what you
Yes.
talked about, like
Yes.
for our children, their children,
Yeah.
etc. When people start to think of what we're doing
Yeah.
and why it's important, I think it can help a lot of people realize, okay, yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that you're already doing it, and supporting and helping folk, and I think the message now is starting to enter the mainstream more, to bring people aware of, wow, there is an opportunity to move into stewardship, to move into harmony with nature, and to see this beauty you're talking about.
Yeah.
One last thing I'll share with you. I usually like to ask a lot of questions, but I'm gonna make it more conversational. I was like you. I do the same thing. Tune in. I call it downloads too.
Yeah.
Listen and receive these insights. And one of the cool things that came through was there is infinite value to everything. And then it sent me on this path to the peanut.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then I was seeing the George Washington Carver's story, but then I was really curious about what was his philosophy. And it turns out, just like you're saying, listening to nature, listening, that he had a quote that I ran across that said something along the lines of, or for those who aren't familiar, George Washington Carver was a black, I'll call him a scientist, but I think he was a former slave, but basically studied the peanut and turned it, what was then a discarded, it wasn't even a major crop in the U.S. until one of the top, because of his work, it became one of the top 6 crops at that time.
Wow.
But he came up with over 300 uses for it through his research. But what his quote, he was quoted as saying something along the lines of that nature is the transmitter of God or
Yeah,
something like that.
that's
Like
beautiful.
I can't remember exactly how I put it.
That feels
I hate to
right.
misquote it, but yeah, but the essence of that was like tuning in and being able to listen, like you talked about, and watching nature, and actually seeing the divine blueprint and copying it. Like everything you just said to me, I'm like, that makes so much
Yeah,
sense. So I love it, brother.
yeah.
Love the work you're doing, and it. I think fundamentally, would you say when it comes to that limited condition thinking, that indoctrination, that slavery you talked about. Of course, we get it from being birthed into society, oftentimes, and
Yeah.
kind of taught that this is the way it is. Would you say that it takes? What do you feel, or have you seen that it takes people waking up? Like, is it just you feel like it's pain that pushes them? You feel like it's infinite ways that people start to wake up, or what are you seeing are the things that are helping people realize? Wait a minute, there's got to be
Suffering,
another way. Suffering,
suffering
yeah,
is the catalyst for asking new questions. When we party, and when we lose, we ponder. Right? When we lose, we suffer. When something's not going right, we might say, we might just give up. That's what happened to me. Well, about 20 years ago. Yeah, about 20 years ago, I just sold a mortgage company. In the 3 or 4 previous years, did $1.3 billion in revenue. I started from scratch in my mom's basement after traveling around the world. And I lived with the Maasai in Africa and all over the place. And when I got home, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had big goals. And I started a mortgage company that did 1.3 billion. I sold it, bought a boat, lived on the ocean for a year, and then I learned what was going on. And when I learned what was going on, I went into the scarcity mode, and I invested every penny. About $20 million of net worth I had back then, I went down to almost nothing. Except for I still had my health, I still had my family, I still had a lot of good things, but no money left. I was in debt. And then I stepped into faith. I was suffering, and I had not fully embraced faith. And when I fully embraced God, faith, it was a moment, it was a second, an instant that I remember. I was walking, it was at night, and had tears in my eyes. I didn't know what I was going to do. And all of a sudden, I just let it go. And from that moment forward, everything got brighter and everything became beautiful. And from then on, it's been a series of divine events. It's like the universe is conspiring to show me the way. And sometimes I get off the path, but man, is it powerful. That light comes back strong.
I love it. And so the very thing you talk about, presence, when we take that time to be present,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the way I think and hear of it is to align. That
Yeah.
creates that expanded awareness and that presence. When we do that, if it to me seems like number one, it's the antidote to the suffering
Yeah. Yeah.
that you're talking about, and it helps us let go. Like it may be the way to let go, but I guess there may be other ways to let go too. But that seems to be my favorite one now. When I find myself stuck,
Yeah. Yeah.
in this triggering or this suffering that is self-inflicted, it's like, okay, let
Yep.
me just get to that place,
Yep.
and then it helps me actually. For me, it's a visceral thing. Like I can actually kinesthetically move my awareness to this other level, right? And begin to receive just very clear instruction, thought, what have you, ideas that just make me feel peace,
Yeah.
and make me feel all is well and always is, and
Yeah.
don't believe the misperception.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's for you when you were in that moment of letting it go. Did you do a practice, or did you just like in that moment that you remember? Was there a practice that helped you let go?
Deep breathing and
Got it.
practicing silence. Okay, so this is profound. Tesla said, at least this is what I heard he said, right? I didn't hear it directly from his lips, so I don't know.
Right.
But if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Now, when I hear a quote like that I've seen multiple times, I'm like, why is that sticking in my awareness? What's important for me to experience about that? Well, so I started thinking about energy, frequency, and vibration, and I'm like, the quote is wrong, and I think it was manipulated, because you can't think and experience, right? Energy. You got to step back from the thinking. So here's a new way to say it. If you want to experience God, then feel the energy, frequency, and vibration, because God is everywhere all the time. So Tesla was right in his thinking, but he was wrong in his experiencing. Right? Maybe that's why the stories of him dying destitute and alone and suffering, maybe they're true. I don't know. But I know one thing for certain. When we take a deep breath and we feel the energy, frequency, the vibration of nature, of source, like my feet are just vibrating right now, stuck on the ground. They're on the ground barefoot, right? It's just, I can feel it in my fingertips. I can feel it everywhere throughout my being. And this frequency vibration is everywhere all the time, but we've been disconnected from it.
Now, this might sound like a wild question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Beautiful.
Your cycles of rest, since you're in nature so much and you're using your practice, when you, what do your sleep cycles look like? I'm just curious. Like at night, do you
Yeah.
find yourself sleeping 8 hours? You find yourself sleeping 3 hours, 4 hours, or it just varies? I'm just curious.
Yeah. It depends. Typically, I've got friends visiting. I have a lot of visitors, a lot of different things going on. But the more I settle into stewardship and just being on the land and working the land, the more I settle into this circadian rhythm of nature. So, like, I used to love being up late, go to bed 12, 1, 2 in the morning, waking up at 9 or 10. Now, I start getting tired around 8, 9 o'clock, and I'm usually in bed sleeping in the 10s. And I imagine that'll change, where pretty soon I'll be waking up at 4 in the morning, instead of 5:30, and I'll be going to bed at 8 or 9. And I have had a lot of experiences where I slept a lot less. I'd sleep 5, 6 hours is plenty for me.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, and I do feel like when we're listening and tuning in, like you're talking about, we know what we need to do. We know
Yeah.
when we need to get
Yeah.
that rest, or when to keep pushing,
Yep.
etc.
Yeah.
So I love that, brother. Man, this has been such an incredible honor. I can't wait to get back down there and experience. I can't wait to share this conversation as well.
Yeah.
For those that you already mentioned, the website. Are there any other ways you're showing up, offering support for people that you want to mention?
Yes. So if anybody out there wants to be part of the solution to all the world's biggest problems, it's joyful, it's fun, it's just you could either do it on your own, you can go on YouTube and just get it done, or we've got a very rapidly growing group of amazing people, and we are creating kind of a network of Freedom Farm Academies. We're opening schools with 25 kids and 3 teachers, where the students will provide all of the food that their families need to thrive at the school. We're opening the CSA, which creates cash flow. We've got all these neat things going on. So if you're interested in any piece of that, then get a hold of us at foodforestabundance.com, or if you'd like to come visit us, right? Our website is galtslanding.farm. That's GALTS landing.farm. And people love it here. So far, knock on wood, we've got a 100% inspired rate.
And I'm not surprised, brother, because I
Yeah.
was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Loved it when I came there. So thank you so much, Jim. I love
Thank you,
what you're
brother.
doing. Love the model. I can tell it's inspired. The proof is in the pudding. What you've been able to do just with that land, much less. I know some friends who have used your services to develop their food for us and are
Yeah.
in the process of doing that as well. So thank
Yeah.
you for that work and the way you're serving and helping others step into stewardship. I
Yeah.
just think that's a beautiful thing, brother. So I
Awesome, brother.
love it. Honored you were here today. Can't wait to see you again, my friend. And we will stay in touch. With that, we are complete. And I will say to all the listeners, stay tuned. Make sure to check the description. You'll see all of Jim's links, everything he mentioned. And get involved, get inspired. Start at home.
Boom.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.